Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Just on 8:12 this morning, and a very good morning now to Matthew Dickerson, who is the Dubbo Region Mayor, and a few things about, and I want to talk about the coolest technology, 3D printing. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Brett. Good to be chatting to you again. Thank you.
And to you as well. Now, we're making way for you at Macquarie Lions Park in West, but we're using some 3D printing technology. This must be right up your alley.
Well, it wasn't actually myself that brought it to councils. Councillor Matt Wright that brought the concept to council, but I'm certainly in favour of it if we can get a construction method that's cheaper and faster. Then we believe we can help solve some of the housing crisis that we've got. We've actually set aside, a council resolution was to set aside 4 housing blocks in a future development of council for houses. But in the meantime, we thought it would be worthwhile trialling the 3D printing technology on something that was a bit simpler than a house, and an amenities block seemed like the logical way to go there. So we've actually got a contract out now for 3D printing on the amenities block at the Lions Park in West Dubbo, Macquarie Lions Park. So the demolition has happened there now. If you drive past there now, what once was an ageing, rusting piece of infrastructure is now no more. Last week I was over there when the demolition team came in to start knocking that down, and that'll be then tidied up, the whole site there, a new slab laid, and then the actual toilet block, the amenities block, will be 3D printed. And I think that'll create a fair amount of media interest, Brett, in the whole concept, because they set up a gantry and it looks quite fascinating when they're actually doing it. And then obviously we'll have normal toilet blocks there. And I think even people will be interested to see how it looks after that particular point in time. But we didn't do it as a tourism process. We really did it to see whether or not this construction method is going to be faster, is going to be cheaper than traditional construction methods.
Matt, I guess it begs the question, environmentally, is that friendly? I mean, you're telling me it's setting up a gantry. Is there any impact to the environment there? How much cheaper and more efficient will this be?
I'll tell you, I'll go to the environment in a second, but cheaper and faster, this is the whole reason for part of the trial. We've obviously put out a tender. We did our quantity surveying to see how much a normal construction process would be with this particular construction method. And it's about the same at the moment. But again, we want to make sure that we do the construction process, see if there's any extras that get added on, what other costs are associated with it. So I think from a cost perspective, at the moment, early days, it'll probably be about the same, but as it gets better and more people are able to offer the service, then I think you'll find the price will go down. In terms of environmentally, the information that I've read on 3D printing actually reduces the waste on a construction project. So from an environmental perspective, you're still using materials, so you're still having to get materials to actually use in the construction, but with less wastage of those materials. Then from an environmental perspective, it sounds better. Construction of a gantry, I don't really see much of an issue from an environmental perspective there. You are just putting up a small gantry to actually do the 3D printing, and then that's removed after the 3D printing. So sounds pretty exciting, and we'll learn more as we go, and it's very new. We couldn't find any other council in the nation that had used 3D printing for an amenities block, for example. In fact, we can't find really anywhere else that 3D printing is done, apart from maybe on one TV show where they did a bit of an example there out by the poolside.
Sounds fantastic, and I think it'll be interesting to watch. I've seen some videos online, but they're always sped up, I suppose, to make it simpler for the viewer. So it'll be interesting to see it for real. Will there be a problem with people coming over and watching and getting in the way?
I think it'll be fantastic, people coming and watching. I'm sure there'll be a fence constructed around there, just a safety construction fence to make sure people don't mosey on in while it's all happening. But I'm actually hopeful there will be a lot of people around there watching, lots of media around watching. And as I said before, I actually think that once it's constructed, people will hear about these toilets that were 3D printed and they'll want to go and have a look at them. So I think you'll be surprised about the number of people who just want to go and look at those toilets. In terms of the toilets, they're better toilets than they were before. In the male toilets, we've got 2 cubicles and 3 urinals. In the female toilets, we've got 5 cubicles there. So they're improved there. We've got disabled access. The current toilets you can't get into with a wheelchair. So we've got a disabled toilet. All of those toilets will be accessible, friendly, or accessibility will be a feature of those. So as with any modern construction you do. So in essence, we're improving those toilets. And the old toilets, if you actually had a close look at them, were pretty badly rusted out. They'd been there for a long time. It wasn't really worth spending the money on the repairs of those. So it was a thing that needed replacing anyway. So let's see how it goes with a 3D printing concept.
All right. people probably wanting to try out the 3D printed loos, I reckon. Let's turn our attention to the construction now of the new $48 million New South Wales Government Workplace Hub in Dubbo. That's right next door to our building here in Carrington Avenue. They're telling me it's one step closer with planning approval finalised for the roughly 5,000 square metre Carrington Avenue development.
So the interesting part with that, Brett, is that DA didn't go through council. There are certain triggers where DAs go to separate consent authorities. This one went to the Western Regional Planning Panel, and what's incredibly interesting there is you've mentioned an amount that's different to the amount that was sent through to the Western Regional Planning Panel. That was $35.7 million that went through the Western Regional Planning Panel. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but they've given consent. So that approval has been given by that particular planning panel. As I said, council is not the consent authority, but we've got information on it, of course. We'll give information during that process. So we're talking about a 5-storey office space with a two-story underground car park there. There'll be approximately 700 people there. And the idea here is that it's actually consolidating approximately 24 different spots that government office workers are located now across Dubbo, all into one building, which makes a lot of sense to me. It'll free up some office space around the rest of Dubbo as well, which might be good for any other organisations who want to move to Dubbo. So that, to me, sounds like a pretty exciting thing. They're calling it the Dubbo Workplace Hub. It reminds me of a concept that I put to government many years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago. I called it a COTA, Combined Office Teleworker Accommodation. I think it was the acronym that I came up with. And the idea was to put lots of different government employees in the one office block from different departments. You didn't need a different office block for each different department. And so they're effectively doing that now with this Dubbo Workplace Hub. So it sounds like a great idea. But certainly for you, next at Zoo FM there, Brett, next door there'll certainly be an increased landscape that you'll see in terms of office building or the side of an office building.
Sorry, Matt, what did you say? I can't hear you because of the construction work.
You'll probably have that problem for a while, I think,
That's
Brett.
Probably what it's going to be like, isn't it? And if we go off air, we already put a submission into council, which I thought I was thoroughly invested in all of that because that might interrupt us, but we're thinking it won't. So, but I like the green corridor space, which is great, and the fact that they're being self-sufficient as in putting all of those places into one. I think that's a top idea, don't you?
Oh, it does. It makes a lot of sense. And some people have said to me, does that mean there'll be vacancies all across Dubbo with various office space? And initially there obviously will be, because they'll be moving from those 24 office spaces into one. But again, there's a lot of demand in Dubbo. A lot of businesses want to be in Dubbo. A lot of organisations are expanding in Dubbo. I don't think it'll take long to absorb that extra office space. And if you talk to a commercial real estate agent, they say it's often difficult to get some office space in Dubbo. So I actually think it's quite exciting for Dubbo.
Yeah, fantastic. Matt, I want to get an update too on Dubbo running for the New South Wales Tourism Award, because that was closing, I think, wasn't it, last week on Friday?
On Friday that closed. So this is one that really is just a popularity contest. Dubbo is a finalist in the New South Wales Top Tourism Town Awards, a bit of alliteration there. This is run by the New South Wales Tourism Industry Council, and essentially they have different categories. We're in the category of over 5,000 residents, and there were just a list of towns in that category, and people just went online and clicked on that to vote, and then we'll see the results of that. There's an award ceremony on the 30th of May, so we'll see that. That's the Local Government New South Wales Destination and Visitor Economy Conference. So at that particular dinner, we'll find out how Dubbo went. Obviously, there's a few different categories there. Dubbo's only in that one category. Hopefully we go well, but it really just comes down to how many people clicked, and that gives a bit of an advantage to the larger communities, the larger areas, rather than Dubbo, which isn't the largest local government area in the state.
Matt, there was also a Q&A online for the water and sewer pricing harmonisation between Dubbo Regional Council and Wellington Council, or the former, when it wasn't amalgamated. Can you tell me how the portal went and how the online Q&A session went?
Well, the feedback, obviously we asked for feedback on lots of different things, and sometimes the community, I understand, feels like they're maybe over-surveyed, but I think it's really important. I really love going out to the community and asking for feedback. In this particular case, the water harmonisation, we had that there where you could put submissions in. I don't have the numbers yet. That's closed, but the numbers haven't been fed through in a council report yet. But just from a brief discussion I've had with some of our staff, not a lot of feedback there. I think in general people just accept the fact that it makes sense. Why does someone pay a different amount for a kilolitre of water in Wellington compared to what they pay in Dubbo? So it does make sense to harmonise that, to have it the same across the board. So really it's just a matter of working out those pricings. Again, the feedback, I haven't read any of that feedback yet. There may be some suggestions in there on how to change it. Keeping in mind that Wellington used to have a tiered water system, so you paid a different amount per kilolitre of water depending on how much water you used. Dubbo had a flat rate. We didn't have a tiered approach. So that'll certainly be one difference there. And that's an interesting one, Brett. Many, many years ago, I'm guessing 15 years ago, the recommendation from the state government was to have a tiered approach, and both Dubbo and Wellington had a tiered approach at that stage. Then, for some reason, the state government changed their mind and said, no, a non-tiered approach was the recommendation, have a flat rate. And so Dubbo changed that at the time and Wellington didn't change it at the time. Then we had an amalgamation. So we're still trying to just tidy up from the amalgamation. Here we are, Brett, 7 years after the amalgamation, and we're still trying to tidy up things and get things in some form of equilibrium.
Absolutely. Mate, I've only got about 60 seconds. Tell me about the tender that's been submitted for the touch footy, if you can, and also the Bowls New South Wales event bid.
Yeah, these were discussed at the committee meetings last Thursday night. The touch footy carnival, we know the Junior State Cup was incredibly successful in Dubbo earlier this year, in February this year. So we've now put in another tender for that for the next 3 years. So hopefully that'll be successful. And Bowls New South Wales are looking to take their state championships out of metro areas. They typically have run those in metro areas for the last 128 years. They want to bring that to Dubbo, which is very exciting for Dubbo, obviously for any Bowls supporters in Dubbos. But this will be bringing potentially 7,000 people over 13 days to Dubbo. Again, we're in discussions with Bowls New South Wales on bringing that to Dubbo from next year, and it'll actually be an alternate process. So we're looking at doing that for 2024, 2026 and 2028, and the alternate years will be in Sydney still in some form of a metro area. So that'd be fantastic if we can get that to Dubbo as well.
All right, Dubbo Region Mayor Matthew Dickinson, thank you. We'll talk at a fortnight. I appreciate your time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Brett. Great to chat.
And you too, 8:24 here at 2FM.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.